Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I'm with Manish Tewari, Senior Congress leader from Punjab, astute political observer, twice Member of Parliament from Ludhiana, and now from Anandpur Sahib, which is a very holy, perhaps the holiest and most sacred site in Sikhism. Manish, of course, is a Hindu, and perhaps if you look at the brutal, cold calculations of electoral politics, that matters somewhere, somehow, but it perhaps speaks to the large-heartedness of the people of Punjab that it accepts people of all faiths. So, Mr. Tewari, welcome to ThePrint.
Thank you, Jyoti.
Now, we are talking, and I'm going to ask you about the current political scene. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi has just unveiled perhaps the biggest reshuffle in recent times. His cabinet has been reinvigorated, if you like. It's been an overhaul. Five states are going to the polls next year in 2022. Uttar Pradesh, the biggest one. But your own state, Punjab, is going to the polls. So let me get your first comments on the infighting in the Punjab Congress. We've seen Captain Amarinder Singh, the Chief Minister, has come to Delhi twice in the last week or so. He has met Sonia Gandhi. Navjot Sidhu, the irreverent Congress politician, never a tweet away. What's going on in the Congress party in Punjab?
Well, Jyoti, everything is fine with the Congress party in Punjab. The Congress party is united, integrated, cohesive, ready to take on the electoral challenge of 2022. And let me elaborate and put things in a certain perspective. Mm-hmm. The state of Punjab in its current avatar came into existence in 1966. From 1966 to 2017, there has never been a situation whereby any political party has won as many seats as the Indian National Congress did in 2017, 77 out of 170.
Okay.
After that, we had the Lok Sabha elections. The Congress, unfortunately, did not do well in most parts of the country. But in Punjab, we clocked 8 seats out of 13.
Right.
Then we had 3 by-elections, and all 3 by-elections were won by the Congress party. We have 5 major corporations in Punjab, municipal corporations. All 5 were won by the Congress: Amritsar, Ludhiana, Bathinda, Mohali, and all 5 bigs that we have, all corporations won by us. Almost 95 or even 98% of the panchayats, block these Zilla Parishads, and recently we had the municipal council elections, all have been won by the Congress party in the past 4.5 years under the leadership of Captain Amarinder Singh.
Why is Amarinder Singh coming to Delhi twice in 2 weeks to meet Sonia Gandhi? Rahul and Priyanka Gandhi refused to meet him. What was that about?
Well, 2022, we are heading into an assembly election. And so therefore, when you head into an assembly elections, you've got to get your election strategy. You've got to get your tactics in order. And it is not unreal, or it is not unheard of, that the chief minister who's going to lead that battle consults with the Congress president. And so therefore, there are certain people who do believe that by tilting at windmills, it makes a good story. But that does not change the situation on the ground. And as I was saying, yes, there are governance challenges. For example, over the past 4.5 years, the central government has been extremely unkind to Punjab.
No, Mr. Tewari, I'm just going to interrupt you. I'm sorry to do that. But, you are talking about the electoral strategy that your party, led by Captain Amarinder Singh, is going to unfold. But when he does come to Delhi to formulate that very same electoral strategy, Rahul Gandhi, who's a senior leader of your party, refuses to meet him.
Well, that's your perception of the situation. I don't know as to what really transpired between the Chief Minister of Punjab and the former President of the Indian National Congress. But I do know that he met the Congress President, and therefore, as is the norm, whenever you are heading into an election, obviously what lies ahead would have definitely been discussed. And as I was saying,
but wasn't that a bad message to the people? You're barely 6 months before the election, and here you're saying that the senior leadership in Delhi is refusing to meet your own chief minister. I mean, that's
I don't think that's the message on the ground in Punjab. The message on the ground in Punjab is that the central government has been extremely insensitive to the problems of Punjab. We have a farmers' agitation which involves each of the 12,000 odd villages in Punjab. People have been sitting on the doorsteps of Delhi for 7 long months. Women, children, elderly people.
But people have gone back, Mr. Tewari. They were sitting on the doorsteps of Delhi. You're absolutely right. But people have gone back because there's work to do. And I mean, if you have to argue about the farmers' protest, now we can argue one way or the other. But the fact is that the central government has said that it's willing to hold unconditional talks with the farmers.
I think, Jyoti, possibly journalists in Delhi do not even go to the borders of Delhi. If you would go to the borders of Delhi, you would see even currently as to how many farmers are sitting there. They have braved the cold. They've braved the second wave of COVID-19. They've braved the heat, and they are still there, and they're going to stay there till the time the farm laws are not rolled back. And there is a major social upheaval in a sensitive borders, and I fail to understand as to how the government of India and its so-called strategic thinkers fail to countenance the fact that when you have Jammu and Kashmir in turmoil, when you have the Chinese who have transgressed into your borders in eastern Ladakh, or at least across the line of actual control as India holds it to be, to have your western state in a state of turmoil, which it currently is, does not for national security at all. So it's high time that the government gets real and smells the coffee and gets off its high horse and really rolls back these farm laws. There would be hell to pay if Punjab gets disturbed once again.
Do you feel that that could happen?
That's a real possibility. The Pakistani deep state has not stopped fishing in troubled waters. Going back to the 1972 Multan meeting, after the Bangladesh humiliation, the two-pronged strategy which the Pakistani deep state adopted, that getting nuclear weapons at any cost and then leading India with 1,000 cuts, that still holds true, notwithstanding whatever may be the current state of play and the ceasefire on the border, which fortunately has been holding, but that does not detract from the main thrust of what Pakistan has been attempting and continues to attempt both in Jammu and Kashmir and Punjab. For the past 1 year, there has been unprecedented drone activity from across the border. Medium caliber and small weapons have been coming across and hand grenades, etc. So therefore, there's a concerted attempt.
I get that point, which is that Punjab is a border state and therefore the security of that state is all important. But can I ask you, in a situation like this, where there is infighting within the party which leads the state, what do you make of Navjot Sidhu's tweets where he's criticizing your own chief minister?
Well, let me tell you, there is absolutely no infighting in the state. Yes, there are certain people who may have certain opinions. And so therefore, they have been articulating that opinion in the public space. And I am not getting drawn into names. And they've been articulating that point of view.
You're talking about Navjot Sidhu.
I am not getting drawn into individuals and personalities.
But why not, Mr. Tewari? The fact is that your state is going into the polls. One gentleman, he's an MLA from Amritsar. He has been going hammer and tongs at your own chief minister. I mean, everybody knows that there is dissension in the party. Why would you not name names?
As I was saying, that I am not getting drawn into individuals and personalities. But yes, people did have concerns. And so therefore, those concerns were heard out in very great detail by a committee which looked at the roadmap for 2022. They've had extensive consultations with almost the entire leadership across the board. And so therefore, now we have almost a roadmap in place. And as I was saying, that our track record of the past 4.5 years, in the manner in which people have reposed their confidence in us, and also the fact that Punjab's handling of COVID-19 has been much, much better than most of the other states, bears itself out or holds itself out. And I'm very confident that come 2022, the people of Punjab will repose their faith in the Congress party, because when I survey the landscape, I see a completely splintered opposition. The Akali BSP alliance is not going anywhere. I don't even know whether the Akali BSP alliance will last till the elections. The Aam Aadmi Party does not have its act together. I don't even think that they would have 117 serious candidates by the time they head into elections. Okay. And therefore, for those people who are in the business of writing the epitaph and the obituary of the Congress whenever an election comes, I think they are in for a rude surprise.
So are you saying that the state will go to the polls under the leadership of Captain Amarinder Singh?
Well, Captain Amarinder Singh is the Chief Minister of Punjab, right? He's led the state for the past 4.5 years. Mm-hmm. He was Chief Minister earlier, has been the Pradesh Congress Committee President, and by any yardstick, he continues to be the tallest leader in the state. The only person who possibly could be seen as his contemporary is Mr. Prakash Singh Badal, who's getting on in years. So, you're talking of a generation of leaders who the people of Punjab hold in very high reverence. So therefore, Captain Amarinder Singh has now evolved to be that father figure and is in that league. And in Punjab, there is a lot of respect and reverence for age.
So would you say then that the father figure, gentleman, Captain Amarinder Singh, that you're talking about, that there could be a succession, and while he leads the state to the polls and the party into the polls, but he may not be chief minister, and that there could be a succession plan that perhaps your party is working on?
Well, the person who leads the party into battle and triumphs in battle is the general who gets to don the mantle. I think it does not require rocket science to figure that out.
Okay, so what happens to Mr. Sidhu? I mean, he's a tweet away from, and the reason I keep coming back to him is because he is a tweet away. I mean, he loves the Twitter handle, which is fine. But how seriously does the Congress party take him?
Look, when I look at the state and when I look at the issues which confront Punjab, I do not look at individuals. I do not look at personalities. I look at issues. And for me, the major issues are that we have been treated in the most step-motherly fashion by the government of India, a crucial border state. You've stopped our rural development funds. You've not paid our GST compensation on time. You have completely and absolutely mishandled the farmer agitation, which, as I earlier pointed out, has huge social and societal implications. So when I look at Punjab as a people's representative, as somebody who represents a constituency which goes across 4 districts of Punjab, which is possibly the largest in terms of geographical spread, I look at real issues and I look for a resolution on those issues, which obviously has to come with the participation of the government of India, which unfortunately is completely unforthcoming.
So do you think, on paper, you talked about the Akali Dal alliance with the BSP. On paper, if you look at it, the Dalit population of Punjab is 32%. On paper, it works very well with the Akali Dal. How do you think this is going to play itself out?
Well, your website or your platform, Print, did a story where they said as to how upset the BSP leadership in Punjab is with the alliance. Because for the simple reason that whatever seats the BSP has got, they are not winning seats. I mean, in my own parliamentary constituency, 4 seats have gone to the BSP, maybe the highest in number out of the 13 parliamentary constituencies. And I can tell you that they definitely are not winning seats for the BSP by any stretch of imagination. And as you go further into Doaba and into Maja and then turn around and come into Malwa, the BSP leadership of Punjab very clearly sees that those 20 seats, which incidentally most of them or substantially all of them are the ones which the BJP had earlier when they were in alliance with the Akali Dal, are not BSP seats by any stretch of imagination. So you are not going to have an alliance working itself out on the ground. And as we currently speak, and of course, politics is dynamic and it's subject to change, I don't think the Aam Aadmi Party has a stable of serious candidates which they could field across the state. In fact, 3 of their MLAs, including the leader of opposition, the former leader of opposition, Mr. Sukhpal Khaira, they have joined the Congress. Another gentleman had come over during my elections in 2019. There are 6 more who are knocking at our door. The only reason we are not admitting them is primarily because there is a constituency level dynamic that gets out of control. So therefore, it begs the question, if the opposition was doing so well, why are people still gravitating towards the Congress, if we are falling apart around ourselves?
Well, if you're not falling apart, which is what you're saying, how, you talked about a strategy that is being forged between Delhi and Chandigarh. Now, how would you look at it? Is Mr. Sidhu perhaps getting his fair share of the pie? Is he going to become a campaign committee chairperson? Is he going to be the PCC chief? Can you give us some idea of how this is going to unfold?
Elections are fought, Jyoti, on issues. Personalities
do play a role, don't they?
Personalities are peripheral. I don't think that anybody in Delhi has a fair measure of the kind of social unrest which is currently taking place in Punjab. And therefore, the people of Punjab, the farmers who have been agitating for 7 long months, actually want political parties to rise above their parties and considerations, unite behind the farmers' movement, and ensure that there's a resolution to the bread and butter issues of the people of Punjab. Let's not forget that 84% of Punjab owns less than 4 acres of land. So therefore, there are real bread and butter issues if MSP and open-ended procurement was to go away. A palliative has been given at this particular point in time in order to placate the farmers, but they see what is coming in the future. And so therefore, if you look at it from the point of view of a common voter, and because Punjab's economy is interlinked, the agricultural economy feeds into the urban economy, what they are thinking and what possibly the media is writing and talking about are 2 parallel tracks, and the twain are not meeting.
Okay, so tell me, can there be a compromise on the farmer protest, or is it that the basic minimum condition is that all the 3 farm laws have to be rolled back? Could there be a compromise between the 2 positions?
Well, in the sense, my sense of what the farmer unions are currently saying is nothing short of a complete rollback is going to satisfy them. The farm laws currently have been stayed by the Supreme Court, and so therefore they are not operational. But if the central government was to engage with them seriously and sincerely wants to find a modus vivendi which could possibly allay their apprehensions, maybe there could be a way forward. But the central government has completely and absolutely non-serious. Just because of a few misguided miscreants who did something which was abominable on 26th of January, something which shouldn't have happened at all and is condemnable. But you can't use that to label the entire peasant movement as a Khalistan movement. Unfortunately, the central government has completely gone over its top, and that's why you have BJP leaders who are deserting the party in droves and trying to find some kind of shelter somewhere. And they are not heading the Congress way, incidentally. They are heading the Aam Aadmi Party way, which then begs a question. Is the Aam Aadmi Party and the BJP in bed with each other? That the BJP, the Aam Aadmi Party has now become the safe sanctuary and the haven for BJP leaders who find it difficult to walk the streets in Punjab.
So if the Aam Aadmi Party and the BJP hypothetically are in bed with each other, where does that leave the Akali Dal? Is it marginalized? Is it isolated? Who could it tie up with? You're saying that the alliance with the BSP is not working. So what happens to the grand old former ally of the BJP?
Well, the BJP has been completely and absolutely marginalized. The fact is that their cadre actually finds it difficult, and I'm not exaggerating, to really even walk on the streets. There is so much of anger which is there against the central government. But insofar as the Aam Aadmi Party is concerned, that's an experiment which unfortunately has not worked, because they've hardly been in opposition, despite the fact that they had the leading or the pole position in the opposition for the past 5 years. They've
Right.
hardly been present on the ground. So therefore, when we survey the field from our point of view, we find that there are substantive, serious issues which go just beyond the normal cut and thrust of electoral politics, which need to be addressed now. You go to the villages of Punjab. What do they tell you? What do they tell me every day? I have 1,800 villages in my constituency. कि तिवारी साहब तुम सारे इकट्ठे होके पंजाब दी लड़ाई इकमुठ होके लड़ो. ये आपस के किन्ने लड़न दा सभा नहीं हैगा. And they are not talking about any internal contradictions between A political party or B political party. They want the public representatives. They want their political parties today to fight their existential battle. The mood in Punjab is very different.
But does that mean that the Akali Dal is over, done for, finished, marginalized, isolated? Is that party over at least in the...
Well, nobody's ever done...
No, of course. Fair enough.
Isolated, as they say, it's never over till the time the fat lady sings. Okay. So the fat lady hasn't sung for the Akali Dal, and it would absolutely be a misnomer to write them off. They have been an integral part of the polity of Punjab. They do have a cadre on the ground, and therefore it would be foolish not to acknowledge the fact that they have people on the ground. But unfortunately, at this point in time, given their 10-year track record of governance, they are not finding resonance with the people of Punjab. That's a reality. And let me tell you, the movement
has damaged them considerably.
Sorry?
The farmers' protest has damaged the Akali Dal considerably, especially because it was formerly in alliance with the BJP.
Well, let me say something which, as a politician, I should refrain from saying. But the way the situation is shaping up in Punjab, if political parties do not smell the coffee, they may be in for a very, very rude surprise. People in Punjab are not liking the fact that while we are going on with our electoral nitpicking, etc., there is a substantial section of the population which is completely and absolutely isolated and alienated and feeling extremely aggrieved. So there is a dissonance between the political establishment of Punjab and the sentiment on the ground. And repeatedly I hear it from people, and I spend a fair amount of time in the field in my constituency. They want all the political parties of Punjab to come together, to rise above their parties and differences and fight their battle with Delhi. ਤੁਸੀਂ क्या कहते ਨੇ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਤਖਤ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਡੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਲੜ ਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਹੱਕ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦਿਵਾਓ. That's the sentiment in Punjab. Unfortunately, many of our people across the board are missing the wood for the trees.
So let me ask you another question, Mr. Tewari. The Congress party in Punjab seems to be like a lone shining star if you look at the national, the horizon. Now, do you think that next year there are 5 big elections coming up? Uttar Pradesh, of course, is the biggest, but Punjab is a key election. Do you think that the revival of the Congress party nationally, because if you see state upon state, the Congress seems to be losing. Punjab seems to be an exception. That the fight back or the revival could come from Punjab?
Well, Jyoti, you're absolutely right. The next round of assembly elections are an inflection point both for this country and for the Indian National Congress. Unfortunately, we've not had a good run, especially from 2019, notwithstanding that we have a government in a coalition government in Jharkhand. We are in a coalition government in Maharashtra, in Haryana. We actually came, very close, almost as close as a whisker, but unfortunately did not make it. But these 5 elections are going to be an inflection point in many ways, because this is going to decide the trajectory of 2024. Were the opposition to win these elections, and I am hoping that the Congress party, does win a substantial number of them, because we are well placed in Punjab, we are well placed in Uttarakhand, we are well placed in Goa, in Manipur. Also, if you recall, last time we had formed a government. In fact, we were the single largest party. It was, snatched away by chicanery, which has become the new normal of the NDA BJP. And of course, in UP also, we've been trying to put our best foot forward. So therefore, if the Congress party was to do well and the NDA BJP was to end up doing badly, and with the presidential election coming up in the July of 2022, that is going to open the road for Delhi in 2024. So in many ways, what happens in the between the January and March of 2022 is really going to decide the trajectory of 2024.
So is that realization that you are talking about, would you say that is across the party, and especially in Delhi, that this awareness, this realization that there aren't that many chances left and that you have to go all out and win these states?
Well, I think every political party, and the Indian National Congress is no exception to that, realizes the importance of winning electoral battles. And as I said, that though the Congress party may have done badly in the last round of assembly elections, and I was in the committee which looked at the reasons for those defeats, and for states in Tamil Nadu, of course, in coalition with the DMK, we did well. Even our strike rate was good. But having looked at what were, let's say, winnable elections in Kerala and Assam, and then extrapolating it towards the elections ahead, I think the importance of winning elections in the next round of the assembly polls cannot be underemphasized by any stretch of imagination.
Now, for the last several months, I mean, of course, we've been through the pandemic these last 18 months, and, political activity hasn't been as overt as it would have been otherwise. But a large part of last year was taken up by many Congress leaders like yourself, who came together and spoke about these issues very feelingly. What the acronym that we used in the press was the G23, or the Group of 23. Now, what this sort of soul searching that you all were undertaking, what are people saying now about that?
Well, you see, the Group of 23 was actually an acronym which was coined by the press, and I do not blame them for coining A acronym or B acronym. But the fact is that it was only an articulation of our concern for the party. It's not as if that letter was written to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. That letter was written to the President of the Indian National Congress, whom all of us hold in very high esteem and in great reverence, because she led us with equanimity, with dignity, with poise, for 17 long years. And it is us who requested her to come back and occupy the chair again when we had a resignation in the May of 2019. So I guess the Congress party as a whole, and let me tell you, because if you take a longer view of history, the Congress started in 1885. It's gone through its troughs and highs. And so therefore, we are definitely going through a trough at the moment, but we still have the largest footprint on the ground. We still have people in every village of the country, from Ladakh all the way down to Kanyakumari. And yes, the Congress worker, and especially given the mood in the country after the criminal mishandling of the second wave of COVID-19, the sand has shifted. And we should definitely articulate the anger of the people with regard to a complete economic collapse, which was brought about by an ill-conceived lockdown, a criminal mishandling of COVID-19, and various other issues, which have now really come to signify the complete non-governance or malgovernance by the NDA BJP. And if you look at the cabinet reshuffle only once again underlines the fact that there is a lack of bench strength in the NDA BJP. I mean, the choices do not really inspire a lot of confidence.
So 2 questions from that, Mr. Tewari. The first is that when the group of 23, when several of you met the Congress president and articulated your concerns, there were a couple of conversations, but has there been any resolution of that? That's the first. And the second question is that when you travel not just across Punjab, but across other parts of the country, do you feel that there is a yearning for an alternative? Because if you look at things on the ground, the BJP seems, despite the mishandling of the pandemic, despite the economic situation, the economy not doing so well, it doesn't seem like there is an alternative to the BJP.
Well, let me answer the question in reverse. I mean, if you look at the results of the 5 polls which took place recently, the fact remains that in Kerala, the Left Democratic Front really stopped the Bharatiya Janata Party.
Okay.
In Tamil Nadu, the DMK Congress combined stopped the Bharatiya Janata Party for whatever it was in play out there. And in West Bengal, single-handedly, the Trinamool Congress Chief Minister, Ms. Mamata Banerjee, who possibly faced the most vicious onslaught which could be unleashed on a state government by the center, really showed them the door. I mean, she gave them a resounding thrashing, for the lack of a better word. So that's what I'm saying. The ground has shifted. And in many states across this country still, the fight is direct between the Congress and the BJP. I think there are 11 states where the fight is direct between the Congress and the BJP. And yes, this is the mood which we need to very aggressively, very forcefully articulate over the remaining months of this government's term. The most significant part of that mood change is the collapse of the economy. There is extreme economic distress across the country, and you have almost a bankrupt central government, a 35 lakh crore deficit over 2 financial years, 2021 and 21-22. So we are staring at an extremely critical situation, and I've still not mentioned China, which has not gone back from the transgression that it carried out in April 2020 and continues to build up troops, which obviously involves an economic cost in addition to a military cost for India. So therefore, the challenge around has become multifarious, and people are realizing that while these guys may be good at window dressing the headlines, when it comes to the brass tacks of governance, they've actually failed this country.
But you raised 3 very important issues, Mr. Tewari: the pandemic, the economy, China. Now, the point is that while the BJP is sort of dealing with all these issues, or not dealing with some of them, for example, the Chinese transgression, my question to you is, the people don't seem to think of the Congress as an alternative. So do you feel that there is some sort of a lacuna, that you're not being able to sort of turn the tide, as it were?
Well, Jyoti, as I was explaining earlier, that there comes a moment when things start to change dramatically and rapidly. And the one thing that the Indian electorate has internalized is that they keep quiet, but when it comes to the hustings, they do express themselves very, very forcefully. And as I pointed out, the next round of assembly elections, followed by the presidential elections, which would become the pole around which some kind of opposition unity would coalesce, and then leading into the final months of this government, you would find a new dynamic playing itself on the ground, because it is not as if the political parties at the top realize that this country needs a change. There is a bottoms-up push from people, which is compelling political parties which are on the other side of the ideological spectrum to get their act in place.
So these 5 elections would be like a make or break for the Congress party.
Well, these 5 elections would be very important in the trajectory for 2024, because one of the states which is going to the polls is Uttar Pradesh, which gives the highest number of seats in parliament.
Right. And Punjab is one of these 5 elections. And of course, that's your Karm Bhumi. Manish Tewari, thank you so much for your time for speaking to The Print. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you for having me. It's been always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.